remember from our earliest session that we talked about defining leadership as moving people from here all the way to this exciting place called there, whatever that is, whatever the preferred future. Vision is that picture of the future, remember, that produces passion in people. And so today, what I want to talk to you about in this session is what happens en route. Because sometimes you're making good progress on mission achievement, and along the way, you get people stresses, people cracks. And I've known a lot of organizations that have gotten partway to there or even all the way there, and there's bodies on all sides of the path. There's hurt people, and there are people who have felt misunderstood, and tragically, a lot of people feel used. And so the leader is doing the victory dance because we've achieved there. And a lot of exhausted, spent people are saying, that wasn't as fun as you painted the picture like it was going to be. And what we're talking about in this session is what happens en route between here and there. What happens to your culture? What happens to the way people behave and relate to each other along the path of mission achievement? Probably the best basic definition of culture is how your team relates to each other. Is it healthy? Is it toxic? Is it in an understanding and sort of cohesive way? The culture is actually about behaviors. Do your team members behave in a God-honoring way? Do they resolve conflict in a healthy way? Do they resolve challenges quickly and in a constructive way? And so the way we say it around Willow is we say every conversation that you have in the hallway, in the parking lot, at the water cooler, at the microwave, every conversation you have with a coworker is either a culture-building conversation or it's a culture-busting conversation. You make a choice every time you relate to a coworker. You're going to move our culture in a healthier way, or you're going to ding or begin to erode the health of our culture by how you talk, by what you talk about, by how much energy you put into your colleagues and coworkers, or if you're a complainer and a whiner and these kinds of things, and not solving problems. So we regularly simply say, you make a choice every day. With every conversation, with every staff member you have, you're a culture builder or a culture buster, okay? Who do you want to be? I have a confession to make. I'm not proud of this. It's just a part of my story. When I went into church work as opposed to the business world and got excited about visions, and so I naively assumed that because there were Christ followers in the organization that I was leading, Willow Creek Church, that all I had to do is come up with the right vision from God, get vision ownership, get the right strategy, and culture would take care of itself. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't Christ followers just get along with each other in the trenches, on the teams? Why wouldn't they resolve conflict the way Jesus tells us to in Matthew 18:15? Why wouldn't people have the hard conversations and signal when they were in trouble? And why wouldn't this all be harmonious? And so I just pretended it was. Now, if something really dramatic would flare up, then I would go into a department and say, come on, can't you get along? And we get along upstairs. How come you can't get along downstairs? And I was naive to this whole thing. 8 years ago, I hired a new human resource director, and his name is Colby. And in the first year of his working with me, he wore me down, trying to convince me that we needed to take a cultural survey to see the health of our culture. And I said, Colby, I know the relative health of our culture. We have pockets of where people are harmonious and motivated, and we have other pockets where there's a little bit of trouble, but that's true in every organization. He goes, do you know how deep the pockets are where it's not going well? Do you know how well it is going, where it is going well? I said, well, I have an intuitive sense about it. He said, I think you need better information. So it took a year. Finally, he wore me down. And we had a across the board culture survey taken by an outside firm. That outside firm said that if your score is at a certain level, your organization is officially toxic. There's too many pockets of disunity and trouble. If you're a little bit higher than that, you would be safe to call yourself a healthy organization. That makes sense. And then above that would be what they called flourishing. And, who knew how important that was going to be? All right. So if you ever were to get serious about improving the culture that you're in, my strongest suggestion would be to measure it, to have someone from the outside come in and survey it anonymously, because you need data. Most people have culture conversations only armed with anecdotes. Hey, did you hear what's going on in the youth department? Oh, they're fighting each other over there. I mean, they hate each other in the youth department. And you go, really? I didn't hear that. Oh, yeah, I heard that. And then, did you hear what's happening in the men's ministry? They love each other. That is the most unified ministry in the church. You go, really? Men? Really? That's hard for me to believe. All anecdotes, right? If you hire an outside firm, it's not that expensive, and everybody goes through the same anonymous survey, you will get objective data that you can benchmark against other organizations of your size, and now you know. Facts are your friends. I keep saying this, especially to church leaders. Business leaders seem to understand this at a more visceral level. I say to pastors all the time, do you know the facts of the health of your culture? And they go, well, it feels pretty good. And I go, that's not enough. You need facts. So we hired the firm, we took the survey. And when the results came back and I started perusing the results, the first thing I realized, you might think this is rather elementary, but the first thing I realized is that these results are not going to fix our culture. We have more information about our culture now, but information doesn't fix anything. And I remember the feeling with all this data in front of me. I thought, but this still doesn't fix anything. And then it hit me. And I can remember this moment like it was yesterday. I realized that the value of the outside survey was that it would give us results that would give us the courage to have the conversations we should have been having all along. So let me say that again. Data from culture surveys simply gives you the courage and the precision to have the conversations you should have been having all along, because it's conversations that cure cultures. Data doesn't cure a culture. Conversations and right actions will cure a culture. So when we got our first report back 8 years ago, we were not toxic. We were just in this healthy range. Let's put it right about there. And it was very clear from the data which departments had trouble. It was an anonymous survey, but you reported in through departments. So we could see that certain departments had disunity, communication problems, and these kinds of things. And other departments were flourishing. I mean, incredibly high scores. So now we had the data. We could walk confidently, not arrogantly, but just confidently into Department B and say, can we sit down? The data, we're not making any accusations here, but you self-reported that you're not happy campers, that there's something that's just not right in the culture here, and we'd like to talk about it. Well, now you can have a conversation. If everybody goes, hey, that wasn't us, you go, no, it was you. It was you. And you're saying you're not engaged, and you're saying there's not healthy communication, and you're saying someone's overworking you. There's a lot of issues here. And there's no shame in this. You want to live and work in a healthy culture. I know you do. I do. Normal people would rather work in a healthy, flourishing culture than a toxic culture. So we're going to have as many conversations as it takes for us to finally, get this all healthy. Now, long story short, an 8 or 9 year story. We've done this now annually. for all those years, and now we're in the upper range of the flourishing area, and the consultant who works with lots of companies and organizations says that, to use his quote, we're in rarefied air. He said that you have really one of the healthiest cultures of any organization we've ever seen anywhere in the world. Now, I'm not saying that to brag. I'm simply saying that culture is something that can be cured. Every culture can get better. And I also want to say something that will be very sobering to senior leaders, CEOs, presidents, senior pastors. The consultant looked at me one day and he said, Bill, here's the truth. You'll try to figure out a way around it. You can't. Your culture here at Willow Creek will only ever be as healthy as you, the senior leader, wants it to be. You can't delegate this to Colby. You can't give this to your executive pastor. Your culture will only ever be as healthy as the senior-most leader wants it to be. And again, I remember that moment. I remember what I was wearing when he said that. And I thought, oh, this is on me. I have to drive this. I have to have the conversations. I have to take the results seriously. I have to make sure that the entire organization sits up and takes notice and realizes that this is really important. And it was sobering and it took a certain amount of work, but now that we're on the other side of this and you can feel the effects of a healthy culture, I couldn't go back the rest of my life. Whatever I lead, wherever I am the rest of my life, I will always work on culture. I will always assess the health of the culture on an annual basis. I want hard data, objective, outside firm, and I know it'll give me the courage to have the conversations that will make the culture better, okay? Now, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is what happens when you're having these conversations and they don't go well. You're in Department B, and you know, you're having the tough conversations, and somebody says, I think I'm in the wrong job, or I think Fred has a bad attitude. What about these things, okay? Well, we've come up with a title for all of these kinds of issues, and it's neutral. I love it. Took me a while to get used to it, but we call all of our people challenges fit concerns. Just fit concerns. We don't say somebody over there's a troublemaker. We don't say someone over there, you know, has a screw loose in their head. We don't say someone over there is this or that. We say, you know what? In Department B, we have a few fit concerns. Why do we do that? Because it takes the emotion and the drama and the accusation feelings out of it. And now no one's calling anybody anything. We simply say there's some issues and they center on some fit concerns. What would be some examples of a fit concern? How many of you ever heard someone say that someone has a bad attitude? Huh? Anybody? Yeah, okay. So, you know, Fred again, I always use Fred. Fred has a bad attitude, okay? So we worked with this and we said, is it allowable for someone to have a bad attitude? How long can someone have a bad attitude and you pay them money to take their attitude and to poison every water table they get near around the organization? How long can this go on before it's resolved? I ask this question all over the world. And when I'm in some countries that are real tough, they go, 1 day. Out the door. I go, oh, wow, 1 day, you know. And then I'm in other cultures and they go, oh, a year, what does it matter? You know, everyone's got an attitude now and then. And so, well, we spent a lot of time on this and we said for attitude issues, it's 30 days. We sit down with Fred and we say, Fred, we love you. We believe you're called by God to be here. And we know there's some issues going on. You got some attitude things. We want to understand them. We want you to know that they need to be resolved within 30 days. Or we're going to move this to the next level, and the next level is going to be painful. So we need to get at this, and we need to get at this fast. So we need to start having conversations daily if we need to, because when 30 days elapses, something's going to happen. Either your attitude is going to change, you're going to convince us that something's wrong, but this is going to get resolved in 30 days. We stick to this. And any other organization can make their choice about that. What happens if one of your fit concerns is you have what is commonly known as a low performer, an underperformer, okay? Well, this happens, right? For a whole bunch of reasons. We just call it a fit concern. We don't label them as a chronic underperformer. We say, hey, we have a fit concern. And when someone is underperforming, we say that's going to get resolved in 3 months, one way or the other. We're not going to let that drag on indefinitely. We're going to have 3 months. We're going to have action plans, conversations about it. This cannot drag on forever. Why? Because we're hard-hearted? No. Who likes to be an underperformer? Who likes to work with an underperformer? Who likes to manage an underperformer? Nobody likes any part of this equation. Everyone wants to perform at the peak of their level. They want to work with peak performers. They want to manage peak performers. If you have a chronic underperformer, no one's having fun. There's a senior leader who I really admire, a female executive, and she puts it this way. She said, if there's an underperformer, a low performer in the group, everybody is pleading for the manager to fix this problem because peers can't fix it. And so they're going, well, a leader, please step up and handle this. And then the minute there's action, someone's talking with the low performer, and there's a plan worked out to resolve it, then everyone goes, thank you, that's what leaders have to do. So you gain credibility when you address these issues. Now, the third fit concern is the toughest. And this is when there's a hardworking individual in Department B again, and their job outgrows them. The organization is growing. Fred used to be responsible for 20 volunteers. Well, now his area has 200 volunteers. And Fred doesn't have the bandwidth. He doesn't have the capacity to lead 200 volunteers. Fred didn't do anything wrong. The organization grew. The scale grew beyond his capacity. He loves God. He loves you. He loves the church. He's a soldier. And there's a problem. He's a fit concern because 200 volunteers need care and he can't provide it anymore. So this is when the organization outgrows. And we say that's 6 to 12 months. And we say that because, yes, it has to be resolved, but I want to go back. Fred didn't do anything wrong. And when Fred didn't do anything wrong, you can't treat him like he did. And you sit down with Fred and you say, hey, here's the truth. We owe you the truth. And the truth is going to be hard for you to hear. We're making the assessment, the judgment here that you don't have the bandwidth for this. So you try to redeploy Fred in an area where his bandwidth is, useful. And if that doesn't work, then you see if you can help him find a related kind of job in another church or industry or something like that. And there may come a point where you have to say goodbye. And Fred didn't do anything wrong. And I want to say this as sincerely as I possibly can. You need to reward Fred, and you need to tell a good story about Fred, and you need to bless Fred as Fred leaves the organization. You need to err on the side of extravagant severance because Fred never did anything wrong. And you don't want to break Fred's spirit and create, the kind of animosity that might be created. So anyway, we have all kinds of fit concerns, if you will. We try to name them, and we try to give them time frames so that the organization doesn't get bogged down with all of these fit concerns. I'm often asked, will you ever have an organization with no fit concerns? We don't believe that's possible. Unless there's like 2 people in the organization and it's you and Fred. But we have a quite large organization, and we anticipate having 5% of our organization in fit concerns at any one period of time. If there's 25%, something's wrong. If it's 0, the organization probably isn't reaching its velocity potential. Enforcing culture is a major job of any leader. I wrote in a book one time, a leadership book, about the necessity of calling fouls. If you're leading a meeting and someone in the meeting personally attacks another person in the meeting, and the leader of the meeting doesn't call a foul, that's a foul. Leaders have to referee meetings, and I like a lot of different opinions in the meetings that I run. And so I'll say, who wants to take this side of the argument? Who thinks, the other way? Let's hear both sides. And sometimes that gets animated. Every once in a while, a line will get crossed, and I'll go, time out. That was the crossing of a line right there. Do you want to back that truck up and kind of take the personal attack out of that? And, you know, at my level, the people just go, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. What I meant to say was, and I go, okay, that's good. Leaders have to call fouls. If any cultural value is being ignored or violated, you move right toward it. You say, hey, that's not how we behave here. That's not what we believe. That's not the agreement that we made with each other. If a worker comes to you and starts talking trash about another fellow leader, a fellow worker, you go, oh, hey, that's a foul. We resolve conflict biblically. We don't slander each other here at the lunch counter. So I'm going to expect you to go to your fellow worker by end of work time today and tell that worker what you just told me. And if you're not willing to do that, then I'll go with you and give you the courage to do it. But we don't allow that stuff to happen in our culture. That's a toxic culture. We're a flourishing, healthy culture. And I'm going to protect it, and you're going to protect it, right? So, you know, there's a lot of enforcement and reminders. And the other thing is true, too. Whenever you catch somebody doing something right in a culture, that's the time to go, oh, that was beautiful. How you just handled that difficult situation. I had a meeting in my office yesterday that was tense. Let's put it that way, tense. And one of my colleagues stepped in when I was at a little bit of an impasse. And my colleague found a new angle right in the moment where it was necessary that opened up the conversation, and it ended beautifully, okay? And after the other staff member left the room, I turned to my colleague and I said, that was awesome. You saw that I was stuck, and you saw that I was in a jam here, and you found a way to help me, and I'll never forget that. At some point, if you talk culture enough, if you build the case that healthy cultures help performance, healthy cultures attract healthy people, healthy cultures retain healthy people. And if you keep preaching that sermon, and if you keep building that case, what you will actually find is people will become owners of the culture, so much so that they will defend and protect the culture themselves. Senior management doesn't really have to do it anymore. You can make any culture better. You can. I don't care if you're starting out at the toxic or if you're in the healthy. Every culture can improve. And when a culture gets healthier and healthier, you can feel it in the hallways. You can feel it in the meetings. You can feel it in the parking lot. And when people are unified and motivated, love their jobs and love the cause they're giving their lives to, they outperform average workers like 5-1 because they're giving their heart. They're giving their soul to the cause that your organization represents. So I feel apologetic for the years of my tenure that I didn't pay attention to culture. I will never disregard culture again the rest of my life. It will be in the top 2 or 3 concerns of mine wherever I lead from here on out. And I think it should be in your top concern, on your top concern list as well. And someday when you get a good report about the culture that you're leading, you'll know the satisfaction that comes along with it, and it's worth the effort.